sure, I appreciate that, introduction, but,
Okay, you ready, guys?
Good afternoon.
Ready outside? Green lights on, let's go. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday, October 18th, Planning Board meeting. I'd ask that you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman Carey is unable to attend the meeting, so the four of us will try to muster through. The first discussion item we have today is the 7-Eleven area real estate on Main Street. If we could start.
Greg, I think we can use it.
Gentlemen, doing great.
Here again.
Thank you for having us come back.
Oh,
And hopefully,
Always happy to come back.
yeah, right.
sure. Well,
So, basically, the
Trying to-
last time we had a discussion with the planning board, we were discussing how the layout should be, what the building should look like, and the applicant had gotten some, input from the ARB, LPC that may have been conflicting, so the idea is to have another discussion to try to work things out. The ARB had provided some pictures of the building that they thought might be appropriate with brick, and at least 3 of the planning board members liked that look, and some of the planning board members also liked the clock tower. And then as far as the building goes, one of the planning board members liked the building being on the east side of the property, which is what the LPC preferred. I think the chairman wanted it on the west side of the property, so, basically, based on some of the input and also the DOT, comments that we just got back saying that they wanted a one way in, one way out, access egress, the applicant is back to show you something today, so.
I think how we left it off is, we said we wanted you to come back and impress us.
I think we're gonna.
yeah, so trying to make it Riverhead pretty, trying to, I guess, keep the brick theme that's across the street, if that's what you said you wanted. I mean, there were other options, but we're trying to keep that same theme, but we did have, we were able to get the double curb cuts, which we hope for, just that they decided that they wanted to have one in and one out, which is fine, so basically, it'll flow around, kinda leaving the building, right, kinda leaving the building centered where you said it was okay. So now it's a matter of, we couldn't get the clock tower to work, couldn't get that to. Eric, you wanna?
Well, we believe that's a retrofit that was a bank, and also the way that building was situated was, it was a corner site and we're mid-block, so we just couldn't come up with a scheme that actually worked. I mean, with the 7-Eleven building, they have the coolers on the one side of the building, so it becomes very difficult to create that asymmetry purposely when it's not a retrofit.
I'd just like to pop in and say that I don't think the planning board indicated that centralizing the building was okay or not.
I don't remember that myself.
Well, I think one of the people on the planning board said that if the curb cuts are how we presented them, if that's the case, then that would be okay, but let's find out what DOT said, how they wanted us to egress and leave and get into the property.
The only feedback I had gotten on the alternatives presented at the last meeting was that one planning board liked CA1, which, like I said, was showing the building on the east side of the property.
Hey Karen, Larry, seeing your materials blocking the
Oh,
microphone.
sorry.
And
No,
also-
It's
no,
on.
it's
Okay,
open.
no, Larry,
Okay.
how's it now? It's fine now.
And another planning board member had liked CF one, which was showing the building back and to the west. So of course, you know, changing the access and egress may change things up a bit, maybe Richard wants to say a little bit something about what the LPC
Sure.
wants.
I can speak for the Landmarks Preservation Commission and indirectly for the ARB also, because we've been consulting, we try to work together on these things. Our overall guidance, as you know, for buildings in the downtown historic district is we like to see things that are contemporary in their design, creative, quality architecture, but that in one way or another relate to the surrounding historic buildings, such as by using brick, as you are doing here. The one thing we try to avoid is copying historic styles. Fake history we want to avoid. And whatever design we come up with, we are going to ask, I don't know who the architect is amongst you, but when you come before the ARB, we're going to say, okay, how does this relate to the surrounding historic buildings, particularly the Henry Perkins Hotel across the street, for instance, and the Historical Society just down the street, and a couple of smaller scale residences. So that's our first instructions. The second thing that we're concerned about is the look of Main Street, what's in town zoning for much of Main Street. We don't want to see cars in front of the buildings. We feel very strongly that especially in a site like this, where there's a residence on one side of the front yard and there's 2 doors down, there's a beautiful residence on the other side in the front yard, that this building should have a reasonable setback, but it should be designed in such a way that the parking is not in front of the building, is not on Main Street, it's back, whether it's 20 feet or I don't know quite what the right number of feet is. And it seemed to us that the best way to achieve that was to take the building and turn it sideways, and so that it would face into the yard. The parking could then be what would basically be in the side yard, but would be the main entrance to your facility, and could even be further back on the property. And our 2 commissions favored putting the building to the west side of the property, because that way it would back up to an existing structure that's there on the next property, but I don't think we feel strongly as to which side it should be on. But we do feel very strongly about not having, we have every place along Main Street from the far east end to the far west end, we have worked very hard to keep parking out of sight, back a little bit, so it's not the first thing you come to. This site is very important visually for Riverhead, because it's right at the west entrance of the town. So it's where you come into the town, it kind of sets the stage, so we'd love to have a quality bit of architecture there. It doesn't have to have a clock tower or whatever, well, that was kind of cool. The ARB's intention in circulating those designs, by the way, wasn't that you should replicate any of those designs here, but just to recognize that certainly in a number of places, 7-Elevens have been done with quality designs, and those were the kind of quality design. We don't want that one here. It's not necessarily fit in Riverhead, but we want to see a design of equal quality here. So, I think that in a nutshell is where the Landmarks Preservation Commission stands on this, and to the degree I'm able, summarizing where the ARB stands. I'd be happy to, if there are questions or comments or whatever. Obviously, I can't speak for, you'll need to come before both commissions and probably in a joint meeting and defend the ultimate design. But on location, we feel very strongly, no parking along Main Street. The best way to solve that is to turn the building sideways.
Just so the planning board's aware, I did provide the ARB letter dated September 6th to the board, and it kind of goes into all these items in detail. So just for my own clarification, you would like to see the building, well, the letter said on the east side of the property.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And as far as the letter said to put the parking and the dumpster and everything behind the building, which may be difficult due to the river and the wetland and the
Mhm.
tree buffer. Would the board be amenable to having parking to the side of the building, let's say?
Yeah, and that's, what we don't wanna see is you come right into Riverhead, the first thing you see is a sea of cars parked in front of a building. So, whatever approach will get the cars back off of Main Street to the side of this building, I mean, if the building still faces forward and the cars are on the side, that's fine. But whatever, you see what our goal is. Our goal is to, maintain the kind of setbacks that are along there, which, you know, all of these designs do, and to keep the parking, which is not a historic use, it's not an appropriate use for a main street, back off the street and, you know, hopefully as much out of sight as possible. Well, obviously you can't be totally out of sight, and your building can't be. And the other reason we thought of putting the building on the east side of the property is the main way you're gonna see this is coming from the west. And that would actually give you better visibility if it was on the east side of the, and facing traffic coming from the west. Because traffic coming from the east, first of all, it's gonna be on the north side of Main Street, and this building will be hidden more from, because there are other buildings along there. So that was the other reason that seemed to make sense, but I think our commission could live with any of those things as long as our main concerns are met. Design compatibility and they're keeping the parking well back from Main Street.
We had a plan with that parking on the side, didn't we?
Right, I did distribute some, as I said, some, now I'm having trouble finding them. Excuse me.
I remember seeing it, but,
I had pulled them out.
great.
Okay, they are.
Which looked like a good plan to me.
Did you see that thing?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Now, granted, these are with a different type of access, but again, this was one of them.
Yeah, and something like that
And
seemed reasonable.
this was another one.
Mhm.
CF1 and CA1. But again, this one shows a different type of access.
Right, and we don't mind the building being relatively close to the street, you know, 20 feet or whatever, sort of whatever the side yard, the front yard, setback is, as long as we'd assume that the street-facing side will be articulated architecturally. So it's not just a blank wall. But, to us, that seemed like a reasonable, solution.
It's just,
I don't know what the other practical
I
implications are,
had
but,
requested that
right.
the applicant bring
I know,
a
that's what it
plan trying to, combine the new access and this configuration, but, I was told that 7-Eleven wouldn't wanna do that, so therefore they were gonna bring what they thought 7-Eleven would go for, which is this CPT one.
We're concerned, like, if we have this one access, cause if you put the building on the east and you have the access on the west, then you won't be able to possibly just make it left out of there. That's why we worked with the DOT to have the west access only in, so you can't turn out of there, cause they're worried about Osborne. When you go to a plan like this, people might not be able to head west on, Main Street, and they can only come in and go out, you know, and have to use, so that's why the double curb cut was, since we knew they probably wouldn't make us take a left out of here, that's why we made it just one way to make the traffic flow easily and safe. So, you know, we're trying to, I guess, wanna do historical, like, representation, modern building, and try to, you know, we try to do something with some, as I think, we discussed last time about a whole landscaping in the front and a picket fence and buffers and stuff to try to hide the cars a little bit. But, you know, we're trying to comply with DOT, we're trying to comply with, you know, the wetlands and the DEC, we're giving up a big portion of the property in the back for wetlands, and hopefully eventually the town will, build a walkway that we're willing to, obviously let them, you know, go through the property and use to extend from the park as long as they want. and also, we have a tenant that, you know, prides itself on being convenient, so for people to get in and out easily and not have to drive around the whole building and go to the back and have access. So that's what we're trying to, make, as best as we can, balance this whole thing and try to keep everybody, happy, and whatever changes I can do aesthetically or, tweak things, I'm more than happy to do. I just don't know if I can accomplish everybody's wish list. And I like to, and I still think at the end of the day, it'll be so much nicer than what exists there today. So that's really where I'm.
Your preference is to keep it in the center, is that right?
It's not even my preference, it's just more so how
Driven
it,
by the access.
I mean, listen, he's the architect, I'm not, I mean,
I'm the engineer.
I'm sorry. My preference is to make you happy and make it look pretty, that's my preference. However, I'm constrained by DOT, DEC, trying to work with ARB, planning, so that's where I'm trying to, make it so that everybody leaves smiling.
Have you done any sketches showing it on the east side and west side, now that we have two entrances? To see what it would look like as far as the
I
parking?
think they would
That's what I had
basically be in the
requested.
it would basically be hitting the entrance, that's why,
Right, I understand that.
Yeah,
But it would
or
be a
you would have
visual
to circumnavigate
representation
the
to the
building.
board that it doesn't work, you know what I'm saying, other than
I
just
did a
being
hand
told it
sketch.
doesn't work.
Right, that's
I
it.
mean,
If you wanna try.
with this entrance and egress the way it is,
How
it
does
seems
this
like
work?
it probably
How does this
might be
affect
quite
you as
difficult
far as the mechanicals
without,
are
maybe
concerned?
even bringing the building
Centering
way
it,
up
bringing it
back
to the
from
sidewalk
one
and
way or
having
well,
everything behind it.
because we have the peaked roof, don't we have to put some
Well,
examples on the?
we have the benefit, once
Making
you
the pretty
finalize
roof
the
changes
design,
where the,
you could do faux gables and put it within the rooftop, or
Okay.
worst case, we have
Show me
the
the one
play
on
around
the
each side to put it so that it's not visible, we
These
could
were the two
hedgerow
that
off
people
the
had
end or
expressed
put
on the
it
board.
behind the building, we have, this is the limit of the service.
But again, keep in mind that this is
so
the
there would be
DOT
room.
configuration.
Is our
Yeah, yeah.
proposed landscape.
Yeah.
So what happens is with the two access ways and the one-way circulation, you want maneuverability into and out of the site, so to pull the building up, basically all you're doing is blocking the sight lines of the vehicles entering and exiting, and now, it's a difficult maneuver to the rear, and it's an even more difficult maneuver to get out of the cut, up and down the front because of the sight lines. And that's kinda why with the in and out, it pushed the building back to a certain extent.
What's the setback? What would be the minimum setback?
I think we're.
Minimum, not what you
Oh,
have.
the minimum?
Yeah.
I mean, we're probably pretty close to what the minimum is, cause we made sure we had enough to provide a fence, street trees, and a nice landscape buffer, row of parking,
So this is
standard
in-
drive aisle, standard row of parking, and a minimum sidewalk, so we're at 78 feet. That's,
Yeah, I thought this one shows you.
Reason I ask if it's the minimum,
Peconic
because
River Community,
quickly,
um,
the building up here, right on the street, and have a house on the back.
yeah, and that's kinda what I'm
And then
getting
your
at, is
entrance is at the back.
once you put the
25
building up
feet
here
is
though,
from
this exit maneuver from
the
this
front
curb
yard.
cut, you don't have very good visibility up and down the frontage. So it becomes a difficult, maneuver, looking westward and eastward to be able to exit the curb cut. Something else we were trying to contend with is, the impervious restrictions as well. So once we shove the parking to the back, you're extending the drive aisles just to access the parking, so the impervious area is increasing right
Yeah.
away, and then it's gonna eat into the amount of parking we can actually provide unless, unless we do like a gravel parking lot or something, I don't know if 7-Eleven would go for that.
we're at a, right, so that was another, right, so to be within the percentage of the impervious of the property, that was another thing that would change if we extended the paving, we would be beyond that percentage too. Which was another thing that was part of that we had to contend with.
How many parking lots did you figure into it? Did you figure parking?
By code, I think we only need 12, we're providing 14 or 15, I think we probably want to.
according to this, it says 13 stalls
13,
required,
yeah.
18 proposed,
Cause I'm, if I'm looking at this, this is
including
going
2 land
to-
bank
This is
stalls.
gonna be difficult. You
Not
put
sure
a
what
couple
that
of trucks in here, it'll be difficult getting in and out of there, As you say, I agree with that comment.
Oh, there.
Be a lot of vision, a lot of blocked vision.
Well, the building would be blocking kind of the vision too, I mean, turning.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
So that's why it's still,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think do you have the picture with the flowers and the trees and stuff, the color, so you can show them how it's kind of blocking some of the
Yeah, I
parking?
mean, the rendering, unfortunately, the trees kinda cover the flowers.
Show them that.
This is just a cartoon rendering of the proposed plan, several. So we're gonna have, you know, the street trees as well as, you know, flowering plants and some evergreens underneath, so that, you know, it is a screen, along with, we're proposing, I think it was discussed last time, a picket fence along the property boundary to kind of dress it up and create a more formal boundary, along with the landscaping.
Is this gonna be planted area?
Yeah, that, we're thinking we would just do wildflower seeding, you know, native wildflowers, something like that. No need to really sod it or anything.
I mean, no matter how you look at this, you're doing one of the things that we absolutely don't want. Parking right along Main Street with a tiny little border of shrubbery. Why can't that parking be moved around, you know, some of that parking at least be moved around to the side, even if the building does face forward?
Yeah, I mean,
Certainly, there are plenty of other 7-Elevens around that are done that way.
you know, if that's the reason I think we said about turning it around, so that parking could then be on the side, you know?
Well, this was one of the alternatives we
Right.
came up with, and quite, you know, maybe I'm looking at it a different way than you are, but I don't see this being any different, because the aisle width is the same, so all you did was rotate where the parking is located. You're still gonna see the parking lot from the street, you're still gonna have your normal maneuverability concerns within a parking lot. It's not any different than that, other than it's rotated perpendicularly, so, you know, it would be one thing if we could get the parking to the rear, but because of the clearing limitation, I think we even drew one of those up, just to show you how limited it is. We can only get 4 stalls to the rear of the building, and make it work and staying within the clearing limit.
Could we
But-
fast
but
forward
that-
that down here?
Sure.
That plan, which is the one that I think both commissions, yeah, I think that's the one we were looking at, or it's similar to it. What it does do is it keeps the parking further back, and it also, you know, and the building doesn't have any parking between it and the street, for instance, so you can have a beautifully designed building that's visible from the street, as an asset.
Okay, fine. But again, this doesn't show the most recent
Right, I know,
egress and access.
right.
I mean, once you got the most recent egress and access, would be the only thing is that you,
I drew up a quick hand sketch into what it turns into.
doesn't really make it easy to turn the building.
Yeah, I agree.
So I just heard you guys talking about potentially rotating it.
Yeah, well, I noticed
Yeah.
that here you've got 25 feet of
Yeah.
setback, so I assume that's the minimum. So you could rotate it and leave it 25 feet.
So the
From the
one,
street.
so the one thing we're concerned about, then it kicks us back with the DOT. The DOT, if we're gonna have a singular access point, they're gonna want it as far from as
Could be
possible from
better.
the signal.
I
So we're
suspect
already,
a nice building would be better
their
than
ideal number right here is at
bunch
least
of parking
75
lot.
feet, yeah.
Hardcore.
And we're less than 75 feet already, so the further we push it this way, the more questionable our curb cut becomes, which is why
What's
the
that?
fact that we have these 2 cuts already reviewed and approved by the DOT was what we were trying to design.
Setback then, the front
But you
setback.
can't go out that way, it's only an entrance.
Yeah.
That's, it's the issue of, it's the exit of the egressing from the western curb cut, it's not the entrance.
Yeah, cause what happens is when
Yeah,
the
it's not
signal's
the-
red, the vehicles queue back, so you can't get out. So they don't wanna back up all the vehicles on the site and effectively
make a
shut
left
it
turn.
down. Yeah, so the in is fine, because the in will get you in and then you can navigate the site. It's the out they want as far as possible
But
from
if
the
you
signal.
move the building to the east and you
Then
only
you
have
can't
one
get
curb
out
cut,
there,
you can't
yeah.
get out of the property safely. So that was the problem with moving the building and going to one side and then only having the one access point, which would be an access point but not an egress.
So access point is pushing this way, which pushes the building back that way. I think everyone agrees putting the building on the west side doesn't make the most sense, again, based on the visibility and the way it's expected to be viewed, whether it's up close or not. So that's where we're getting squeezed out, is at that eastern point, trying to fight building and access in the same spot.
This is the one you and I had looked at, this is what we were looking at before. Obviously, pushed all the way to the west, and this way you have your, now you're throwing in the driveways.
Yeah.
Now you're throwing in the driveways, this works beautifully. Can't incorporate this anyway.
Well, that would work great if we could get to the parking to the rear, and again, it's really the clearing limitation.
This is side parking, isn't it?
No, I believe that's a roadway. I believe this is the main road and there's a side road, and the parking is here on this side, and that's,
Oh, these are two different,
Well,
these
they
are two different
need to go to
buildings.
the.
Oh, they're the same
Oh,
building.
no,
No,
same
same
building,
building,
okay,
but
so
it might have been a retrofit of a
Right,
bank.
right.
My
This is
feeling
the front,
is
so the
they're
parking is.
not going to want them
yeah,
to impinge too much into the wooded area, and I don't think that's particularly desirable, as far as an environmental
What's the
protection
furthest you can
standpoint.
push it back?
That's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
Keep the parking off the street.
I mean, they don't want us to clear trees and clear the whole back of the,
that's where we kinda sat, cause even if we move this up to a 0 lot line, we're only getting, 4 or 5 stalls. It goes back to that other one we just circulated, you're really only
Did
getting 4 or 5
everybody
stalls
see that,
back there.
the
Yeah,
red
this
line
one.
drawing?
I'm looking at it.
Oh, no.
I think we're leaving about
Coming down.
15,000 plus or minus square feet as a buffer in the back between the water and the actual, maybe even more than that to the actual building, probably to this line.
Yeah, we're holding the existing line that exists
Well,
out
no,
there.
I don't think that goes too much further back than what they're proposing
Yeah,
now.
this is reference for you too, our proposed plan versus what's out there. If everyone wants to see this one again.
Yeah.
Yellow all the way on it.
Yeah. No parking on the street. Okay. That's not parking, no parking. And you can't
Which
go
one are
in
we
and
looking
out.
at?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What? You have two? Building of this house. Separate, I don't know what they, I don't know.
Do we know what the setback is of this house?
Oh, really?
Is this still here with the buffer?
Looks like it's less than 25 feet.
Yes.
Behind the building. Go out.
But it's got two way,
Well, this is not developed yet, but this looks like it's
entrance exit.
it's big
I don't
use.
think it's, is it one way? Oh, that's right, because you got the island between it also, yeah.
George,
I try not to
if
go much
you're
down.
done with that, I don't think, Rick has seen it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think that's more appropriate.
Yeah. I think the LPC would probably like this, but I have one caveat, and that is, it should be set back, at least to match the residence next door, for instance, or this residence that's down this way. I don't think it's probably the legal 25 foot, so a variance is probably needed, but set back enough so it doesn't look like, the bunch of buildings that are back off the street, and all of a sudden this one's up in front and then all the others are back again. And, if we could achieve that, I would say this plan would achieve all of our other goals, assuming it fits your parking in. We're assuming you're gonna design a nice building, so that should be visible. You probably want it visible for commercial reasons anyway, and it does keep the parking, so it's not the primary feature.
Is there a sidewalk in front of that, along the street, Richard?
I believe there is,
There is.
yes,
7-Eleven is especially in that area would attract a lot of foot traffic.
right.
Yes.
Yes, there's a sidewalk all along that area.
So would the planning board like the applicant to come back with the?
Does that work in your plans? Can you make that work?
Can I see that?
A little bit farther down.
Erwin,
You get Bridgehampton National Bank.
Bridgehampton National Bank.
Getting close,
Yeah.
and it's not
Mhm.
right
Getting
to
close.
scale, so we'll have to see how it squares off, but if we have to move it back to where that house is, we'll probably lose the whole row line. So we would move.
So, you're saying put a square building here,
Parking would be at the rear.
but you want the building up to the sidewalk?
That's all the way.
It needs to be set back to match the neighborhood. And, I don't know if that's the full 25 feet that zoning requires there, you know, I'm sure that could be dealt with, but it should match the other houses to the east and west.
Look at the houses to the east and the west, they're pretty close to the street.
Yeah, they are pretty close to the street, right, and certainly having this be the same distance from the street as those would look good. It doesn't need to be set back any further, but it shouldn't be set forward either.
Well, if
That's-
it's set forward beyond the 25 feet, they've gotta go to ZBA.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I think if we were supporting that because it fit in visually, architecturally, and historically, I'm sure the ZBA would be amenable.
Yeah, I mean, these three stalls would probably have to go, and we'd probably have to use the area.
I think it would, yeah, plus you'd have two entrances, right? So they'd have two entrances, they would lose floor, wall display space, plus they'd have problems now putting in the refrigeration. And it'd probably have to be a flat, you know, almost a flat roof to put everything on top of the roof as opposed to the.
Either that or it'll be ground level.
And I don't even know if they'd accept parking in the back, so.
You can make facades, you can.
It can be hidden, it doesn't have to be a one-story look.
Right.
And the roof does not have to be peaked either, by the way.
Oh, that's okay, I thought you wanted that as
Yeah.
opposed to the squared off,
No, there are lots of historic buildings that, do not have peaked roofs.
Like a Federalist style.
will this change?
And that would
any
sound like a good way of
impervious
meeting your
issues?
footprint problems too.
Well, that's why this is probably gonna have to get converted, it's gonna get tough, cause this is the same as the parking lot here, so you're extending these aisles, so it's probably gonna push us over the threshold.
So where would your dumpster trash and,
It's in the corner.
corner?
Yeah.
so that would make you, so that would be making the trash next to the neighbor? You'd be putting it back over by the neighbor's property.
Extra copy of that.
We maybe get some copies of, that?
Sure.
Of someone? Greg, I'm sorry,
Your machine,
could you make some copies of that for everybody? Thanks.
maybe blow it up.
So I think I hear the board saying you wanna see another alternative at this point, more like.
Yeah, I'll try to draw it for you, I just don't know if the client's gonna accept it, and then we're gonna be back to.
One of the reasons for centering the building is, and having the parking in the front, by the front door, is for customer convenience and safety. We don't want, in the rain, especially bad weather, people walking to the parking lot to get to the front door. I think if you look at every 7-Eleven we have on Long Island, parking is in the front. And that's basically our design, and that's what's more convenient for customers. Keeps them safer, and it just allows for nice flow.
Then you can turn the building sideways and make the front, face to the west.
I guess that would be.
And you could still have that loop around the building as your driveway.
Well, no, if the building, is this the one which turned to the west? But you're still gonna see the parking from Main Street here.
You're gonna see it, but it's not right in your face. It's back enough so it's,
You could also put a, stockade fence along, or some sort of fencing along the back, parallel to the parking lot, and that would really block the view of it from the road.
Wait,
to there. Cause then if you're driving from this way, you would not see anything this way, you got the building blocking it from this way.
The issue with that plan is that we lose a driveway, we lose a curb cut.
Right, you have a single point of ingress and egress.
So you can come in and you can go east, but you can't go west.
That's what we're
That's because
concerned
of
about.
DOT?
But this
Well-
plan,
DOT said they're gonna have two curb cuts.
One in, one out.
one for in and one for out.
That's what we're concerned with,
Oh, I see, right.
so that's the problem here, you might not be able to go
And
west.
if you have that one customer who's waiting to make that turn, the signal's constantly cues back, so you're gonna cue back, the parking lot's gonna shut down the whole site, yeah.
Gotcha.
Well,
It's not like we're trying to be, it's not like we're trying to be stubborn or trying to be difficult, we've kind of sat down and kind of
It's a difficult
try to, it seemed like, it seemed like, in all fairness, it seemed like a very simple site, it's not really nice, we didn't know until afterwards that with the ARB, what their issues were, but as far as, you know, strictly a retail and the kind of site and taking this mess and cleaning it up, it seemed pretty simple and straightforward, and as far as making the building look pretty, more than happy to do that, I just don't know how we can accomplish either turning the building where then people can't get in or out, or even if they can make the left, will they be queued up to make the left, or, you know, as far as that goes, and parking in the back is not really, I don't know if it's even gonna work for the client, even if it could logistically be drawn out and we met all those other issues. So that's kind of, you know,
Probably want you back.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
not that, it's not that we're being stubborn, I'm willing to compromise anything, it's just that we've tried to do our homework prior to, you know, after the first meeting with you guys, trying to figure out what other things we could come up with, and again, you know, falling in compliance with, you know, what the DOT wants in terms of safety, what DEC wants in terms of not, you know, ripping out all the trees and, you know, moving
Well,
stuff to the back.
Again, we haven't had, you know, they haven't gone before DEC or the CAC, from my understanding, correct? You haven't.
Our
applied for
application's
anything.
in with DEC, yeah, we don't have their response yet.
But they're not gonna want us to push anything back, I mean, that's, I don't know.
I'm, looking at this plan, this little sketch,
Oh,
I would think
this
it
thing?
would work,
What are they on? Sure. I'm sorry.
I would think this would work better if it were flipped the other way. And so that, you'd come in on the west side, which is your in, right? And there could be a few parking spaces there. And then you go out, on the east side behind the building.
Well,
Where would you
I don't
propose
think
the
that would be a good idea.
main entrance?
It could either be on the facing west to those small number of parking spaces. There could even be more parking spaces, set up right in that area there. You wouldn't have to have many of them in back. But we'd be back to having the entrance, facing on the west side, if it were flipped that way.
If I'm understanding correctly, you're saying to put more parking stalls here?
Right, just turn this over, so that those parking
Right.
stalls would be on this
But
side, the
just-
building would be over there a little
That
bit.
would be problematic because you'd have people backing out of the stalls where people are
okay.
coming in, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, I can see that.
The trouble with it on this side is you can't see it. You don't have
So
it.
I don't know if we're
Right.
gonna, to resolve this today, but,
You know,
Can we at least talk about the aesthetics, what you like, I mean, let's try to at least, you know, work on that and get some input / ideas.
at the last meeting, we had talked about how, at least some of the planning board didn't like the generic country style, 7-Eleven. And it's up to the board, this looks pretty similar to the generic country style 7-Eleven, except it's brick,
I
me
mean,
anyway.
now, the Flanders one had like a hardy board kind of thing, which I personally like the hardy, I like stone on the bottom and the hardy board look, but you wanted us to match the building, so that's why, do you have those samples?
I don't have the same. We don't have
Yeah,
this color, so it wouldn't have matched.
No, I thought you had the one that was, had the hardy board, and the
Karen,
like
you
the,
gotta get it off
the
the
stone
Brown
and the,
one, yeah.
you don't
I
have
don't
that?
have that with me.
So, I mean, that makes it look prettier, but it doesn't match your brick, so it's, again, that's.
These were the ones that we were thinking about. And I think most of us like,
That's the back and the front, Eddie. That's the front of the building, the
okay.
one you showed before with the back. Here. Same thing.
okay, yeah, it's the same one, yeah. That's kinda what we had in mind.
You mean that type of brick?
I mean,
Well-
it doesn't
Oh, you
have to
wanna-
be the same brick,
Right.
I mean, it could match, again, I don't know what the,
Well, yeah, I mean,
I mean, that
The-
looks
the
more,
idea is to
any
pick up some of the
bigger
colors in
windows,
the
I mean, that
area,
looks like a
so.
bank, I mean, like I said, I think those are retrofit banks, so I, you know, if I go with that kind of a style, I think we still need, like, you know, full glass / windows.
Well, I think what, if I remember correctly, we said impress us, and you said, yes, we're gonna,
Yeah.
but this is a typical 7-Eleven, and maybe I'm wrong. Did you see this?
I agree with you, Eddie. I
Did you see
mean,
that, Richard?
I think, yeah, I've seen it. It's a very nice design. It may not be the design we want here necessarily, but I think the Landmarks Commission, the ARB, will probably say brick is fine, glass is fine, but the rest of this isn't gonna win any architectural awards. It's,
Just for a second, what Eddie was trying to point out, this is the front of the building, that's the back, that's not a separate building, it's the same. I was confused, so this is the front of the building, and that's the rear of the
Yeah.
building,
Mhm.
with the parking in the back.
So this entrance could be a walk-in entrance and then there'd be another entrance on
Right.
the same side for parking,
I mean, does that make any, no.
well, certainly,
Now, that would bring the
it's
building, I don't know if it's, I don't know if the concept would work, but it would bring the building up, there would be no parking. The building would be up front, it would be in line now, would be in line with the other houses, which is your concern, and then the parking to the side.
Mhm.
Now, if that can be worked in anyway,
that's what this does.
I mean, that seems to work, no?
I mean, one of the things the, ARB had talked about in their letter was giving architectural interest to all sides of the building.
Well, all sides that are visible, right? Mhm. Which any good design would. I'm sure you'd wanna do that too.
You guys wanna go back and put some more ink on paper and come back, or, you know, I don't think anybody's too happy on this side of the table.
This seems to be taken.
The one that they like. That's what I thought, you retrofitted an existing building.
Did the DOT make a statement that you have to have two entrances?
Yes, the DOT said one way in, one way out.
So that makes it hard to stick the building on one side.
Microphone.
We're trying to get the.
It appears to me that if you put
Blocking the microphone.
the entrances, I think you propose first to the east, I mean, this keeps it the furthest away from that traffic light as possible. I mean, they didn't go for that.
Well, I don't know that they wouldn't go for it, they preferred the in and the out, because then you divorce the
Yeah,
maneuvers
right,
and your
exactly,
circle
I get that,
system, yeah.
I get that, but if you had the parking now to one side,
Now you have the rear of the building facing the oncoming traffic from the west, it sounds like is important for LPC. So that's what we're struggling with, so now,
You could give us a nice rear.
If we just take the building here and just stick it here, won't that allow, I mean, will that allow us to keep this exit and put some?
of these, yeah. But, so if they want us to align the building or stay within the 25 feet, we're gonna be up here, we're gonna be blocking that, so we would be.
They have to push it in the back,
we
but at
would
least
be back.
it's on the east side of the property, which is what they say they prefer, so you see it when you're coming,
Just do that, and then leave the parking as is, with the sidewalk to the front.
we'll put parking maybe more, I don't know, is that,
Well, once you put the parking there, that's that other one we already drew up, one of these ones, that's the one you have right here.
But it's just moving the building back to save the egresses, as opposed to moving the building forward. If we move the building forward, we lose the egress. If we move the building back, we have it on the side.
Just so people who can't see, they're showing the building on the east side of the property, but moved
Yeah,
back
but it's really on the
further.
It's in the front of the building, but
Allow
it's, they're looking at it as,
egress
have that on
point.
what you had?
And to me, that sounds like a good solution too.
No, the other one.
So
Yeah,
I don't wanna,
but this way we keep our double curb cuts.
I don't think we should try to design it today.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
maybe come back with one drawing like
but
the
I'm
one
a-
originally.
Yeah, but I'm asking if that's, so, we can't have the building up to the street without, or even up to that setback without having an egress issue, but if we move the building back and turn it sideways, it's similar to this, except the building's
What's the egress problem?
we wanna have both, we wanna have both.
Two entrances.
You'd have to have two entrances. Yeah, you have two entrances, so look,
It would have to be at the tail end, I mean, there's no
an
else to
entrance
put it.
here,
Curb
which
cut.
is your front,
Hopefully they'd be okay with
and you
it.
put your other entrance back here, and you got your whole aisle here for your customers, and then all your storage and everything back there.
Wait, I'm not sure what you're, which,
Here's your street entrance,
right, but what are you talking about putting the building?
right, close to
Oh,
the
so
street,
us-
if it's up, if it's up.
I was talking about putting the building back in this corner, that's what I was,
What I would suggest at this point is to give us two plans drawn up by the engineer. One following up on this style, which they sent around as a red sketch, and another
And this
one
is a
with
double
this
entrance,
suggestion
in and out.
with the building to the east and move that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then the planning board can look at those two.
Problem is, I think we get more direction, only about 10 parking.
This
Well, they're gonna have to show us with
Yeah.
that one.
I don't know if the,
know.
I don't know if this is gonna work for the customer though, the other one might be the
And this
compromise
is
they
up
can live
further.
with.
This is up 25 feet.
It's more than that. It's,
half that front.
23,
no parking
about
in
50
You're gonna
something.
have to have parking in right there. This is what
In
we-
order to meet the parking, yeah, we're
Yeah.
probably only gonna get 8 or 10 out of here, so we would need some up here or somewhere else, and that's the problem, once we push back, we get squeezed out, providing enough parking. This is the most efficient way to get the parking in, because we're getting the full length or width of the site, if you will. Once you turn it, then you're shortening, this dimension is shorter than that dimension.
The location of the building isn't that big a deal for me as it is for others, but the elevations are a big
Right,
issue.
which you were clear the first time,
I
okay.
understand that. Like I think Karen said, we're not gonna be able to design this right here. Why don't you guys go back to the drawing board and come back and try to impress us again next time?
Is
So-
the brick, elevation acceptable, or you want that modified?
No,
Did you get a copy of this?
I think I think Ed was pretty clear on that, this is not acceptable.
Traditional
We're more in line with,
Yeah.
with like
And
this.
just remember that in addition to needing planning board approval, this also needs landmarks preservation approval. So those are two separate approvals, and that will not fly with the landmarks commission.
This one won't either?
No,
This one they're proposing.
Right.
I thought I heard that these were only examples of other 7-Elevens, but you weren't requiring us to do that.
That is the position of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Those are just examples of other 7-Elevens. We wanna see a quality design that relates to the materials and other surrounding buildings, but is not historic imitation.
Okay, let's try to keep moving here if we can.
Thank you for.
Okay, thank you, we'll get there, all right, we'll get there.
Thank you. And I know you put a lot of effort into
Yep.
For the
that what you need, Karen?
ideas and
Remember
concepts.
Monday, I think we needed
Is this
to
gonna
hear-
be a formal meeting again, or is it something we can send to you in the
I've
interim,
got
get
enough
feedback,
copies.
or how does it?
It's the
what
new,
are
it's the
our
new
options?
stuff,
We're
yeah.
gonna have to come back
It's
before
what they're
the
gonna
board.
do is
I
they wanna
think
see.
that's
Okay,
the
so
old
this
Do
is
you
one.
wanna
kinda-
work with planning a little bit ahead of time?
Okay,
Let me have those
but
back.
it's, so it's
Sorry.
still another
Trying to
scheduled
keep
meeting
an
like this,
archive here.
we'll just get to that point.
This is
Okay.
where else we should be.
No, you've been very good, I just
Oh,
trying to.
I'm not trying to delay you.
No, I know you're not, I just
We'll
trying
discuss
to
with
understand how the process works.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Okay, moving on to discussion item number 2, it's 203-213 East Main Street.
I'll be right there. I just gotta
Okay.
get the plan. No, I'm going this way. Thank you. Take care.
And
Karen, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had given everybody, this is 203 through 213 East Main Street. It's a, town board application, cause it's in the urban renewal area downtown. But, they're doing scoping for the environmental impact statement, and the town board wanted input from the planning department. So, you were forwarded, the plans, the scoping, draft scoping document. I gave you my last report on the project. So just to give a little background on the project, it's, a mixed-use 5-story building with 170 apartments, 3 retail stores, and a mostly underground parking garage on a vacant 61,987 square foot site, and it's composed of 4 parcels in the DC1 zoning district. It's on the south side of East Main Street, west of McDermott Avenue, and it's also west of the Riverview Lofts project, which is under construction on the west side of McDermott Avenue. So it's between Riverview Lofts and East End Arts. It will be approximately 60 feet tall. It'll have 4 wings extending west from a portion of the building to the east that connects the wings.
Karen, was the applicant advised that this was on for discussion?
Yeah, they couldn't make it tonight, I believe. They were informed.
Simply a referral from you to them.
Just wanna make sure that the.
Yep, they were notified of it, yep.
Thank you.
So basically, the building will extend from East Main Street back to the Riverfront parking district area. Between the wings, there are outdoor areas with landscaping, walkways, etc. Along the west side of the property, there's going to be an emergency access road / pedestrian walkway / loading area. So they're proposing a separate entrance and exit to the partially underground parking facility.
Facility entrance looks like it's coming from the south.
Yes, it's coming from the parking district, and it will require changes to the parking district, including, I believe, loss of several parking stalls, changes to landscaped area, etc. They're proposing 88 parking stalls. 2 are proposed to be parallel parking stalls. I believe a couple of them will have to be gotten rid of, so it'll probably be a little under 88 parking stalls that we end up with. There are proposed commercial uses on the ground floor, including 3 retail storefronts, 910 square feet, 1,000 square feet, and 1,532 square feet. And there's going to be 30 apartments on the garden floor, which is about a little over 5 feet above the ground floor, and 35 apartments each on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. So it's a little bit funky. In the front, you'll have the retail on the ground floor, and then you'll have 4 floors above with apartments. And then as you go back in the building, you'll have this
Half level.
half level, and that'll be 5 stories of apartments. So that's,
Are the two areas connected, because the garden area's in the middle?
right, you have the base of the building, I guess you'd say, along the east, and then you're gonna have these projections pointing towards East End
Finger.
Arts.
The architect refers to them as fingers.
Okay, and the idea is to integrate the East End Arts open space with the open space between the fingers. So,
Do they have an elevator? I didn't see an elevator.
oh, yes,
I hope so.
yes.
They would have to by
On
code.
each wing, on each finger.
That I can't tell you for sure without looking through the
They asked
plans.
if they were connected.
There's an elevator down in the parking facility that will take people up from there.
It's a street entrance too, is it not?
Yes, there's a street
For the
entrance,
building,
and there's a parking, you can access the building from the parking. And then you can also access the building if you're a resident, I believe, from the open space areas to the west.
Is the applicant proposing that, I see about half of the apartments are gonna have a parking stall. Where does the applicant propose that the others, in the parking district, with the other half?
Well, that's gonna be part of the secret review. I assume that's where they're
Okay.
thinking people will park.
Well, that would be one of the comments back that you want further evaluated through the secret
Or
process.
cut
is-
down the number of units to match the parking.
I definitely think the planning board has a
Flow.
big concern with, the amount of parking that's provided on this project. That's something we should definitely pass on to the town board.
So you think the proposed number of parking spaces is insufficient?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's a shortage of parking in that area
And
anyway.
size of them, I think also.
Anyone visiting
Oh, not 10 by
that site
I
now
don't
in
think
the
so.
back,
Yeah, I think they are there.
no parking?
Are they 10 by 20s on there?
They are 10 by 20s, they're, like I said, they're proposing 2 parallel parking stalls. I believe, one parking stall is cited inappropriately, cause I had brought up that person backing out of the stall wouldn't be able to see a car coming in. They've now put a handicapped access aisle there, which I don't think works for the handicapped person, so.
Does the project completely make it in, the town code, is it?
Oh, I have questions about certain things, and the chief building inspector has brought up, whether the parking level is really a level below grade. The height of the building, I'm not sure if it's actually 60 feet or a little more than 60 feet, because according to my calculations, it's a little more than 60 feet, unless the additional area above that is parapets, because according to the town code, those are exempt, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are still kind of, haven't been properly detailed or
Vetted.
One of my other concerns that I would appreciate you pass on to the town board is the elevations. I don't find the building to be attractive. I think white stucco, would be a big mistake. Mold and all other stuff growing in there. I think the elevations have to drastically be improved. That's my opinion.
Aaron, on the east side of this building is the one that's being built now.
Yes, that's
They're
Riverview
they're
Lofts,
adjacent to each other.
Georgia Green Ventures,
What's in between?
nothing,
What's in between?
Nothing, they're neighbors.
nothing. So,
Zero lot line?
Zero lot line.
oh, yeah, well, yeah,
So they're gonna abut.
I believe so.
So that has just an issue for the fire marshal also.
Well, the fire marshal, he has to comment on the latest plan, but he did have concerns about emergency access issues. I do as well with that walkway area. It's supposed to be for pedestrian access. It's being told to us that that's for emergency access as well. And I had questioned where people would load and unload when they're moving, you know, deliveries, what have you. And I was told they would be doing that in that area as well.
It's gotta be pretty wide.
So, well, I don't recall off the top of my head, but it's,
5 feet?
no, it's not. It's not very wide. It doesn't meet, don't believe it meets the fire marshal access way.
For a fire truck?
Yeah, I don't believe it does. So,
A lot of room for that.
and I think in their response letter, they said that they'd have an employee on site who would make sure people loading it and unloading would get out of the way if there was an emergency. You know,
The other thing, the planning board, a year or two ago, whatever, recommended, I don't think we ever did it officially in writing, but that, code revision, look at the parking calculations for downtown. In my opinion, residential parking should be 100% parked. Commercial obviously is in the parking district, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think,
Same way.
that should be a recommendation from the planning board to the town board. It's not gonna affect, obviously, projects in the pipeline, but anything new, they have to create their own parking.
I mean, certainly, just to go, I understand that, and I think that may be being looked into. But, another concern is, you know, the Riverview Lofts is under construction. This is constructing at the same time. You have all those construction impacts times two. Where will the construction workers park, you know, how will they stage this, will the
That's
materials
all
be
information they're
stored?
gonna have to provide.
So I don't, you know, this is for you to give your input, for the, draft scope to be completed. I think one of the other concerns is the type of piles that will be used. That was an issue with Riverview Lofts. The last comment letter I had received was that they would follow industry standards, which is kind of a concern.
It would take a lot of, they made it take a lot of interior photographs of the buildings when they start. It's back to there already.
So, you know, I think there's still some questions about things like trash. How is that gonna be stored? Well, they say it will be stored in a couple of rooms inside the building, but how will it be picked up?
Sure.
Things like that.
Usually they have it on the floor, they have the trash, people can walk up to it, open it up, throw their trash in, go right down into the dumpster or compactor.
Well, I think it's more of a concern,
Pick up.
where these, pick up.
Truck's gonna pick up.
How will this be done? We're not like Huntington, we don't leave trash bags out on the
Right.
sidewalk,
No.
so.
They did explain that at the town board meeting on Tuesday night, the garbage dumpsters would be at the front of the building, what's inside the building, and there'd be a trash chute for that. And then when the day of delivery, the truck would come up, they would have to be rolled to the back of the building where the truck would pick them up.
Yeah, that's gonna be on the applicant to give us a workable plan.
Because they won't be able to fit on, the truck would not be able to fit on
Is
the
there more on that,
building.
Ken?
What's that?
Is there more on that?
For sure.
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted me to go into all my concerns. I thought you would be, you know, more, but I can elaborate if you like.
Oh, there's a few more, go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that should be addressed is, with Riverview Lofts, we had requested that they put the overhead wires underground.
Yep.
So I think that should be addressed. Impacts to the parking district, like I already mentioned, with the loss of parking stalls, et cetera. Effects of construction worker parking. on the district, where employees will park if not within the parking district. Just demand for, let's say, bus service. That's something that I think Suffolk County Planning Commission brought up.
Is there no service down that far? There's no bus service down that far?
Oh, they're concerned about, like, how will it impact their service, like, how many people might want to use the bus, that kind of thing. The type of piles that are gonna be used, the noise impacts, the vibration impacts they might cause, impacts of, loading, moving vans, deliveries, trash storage and removal, sufficient access by emergency vehicles, how non-emergency vehicles will be prevented from going into this pedestrian way. In the last response, which I haven't reviewed yet, but I did look through, they said they were going to provide some sort of removable, lockable bollards. I'm not sure what the fire marshal feels about that at this point. Of course, traffic impacts will have to be addressed. The impacts on East End Arts. The construction is very close to their property line. In their last response, they did say they're going to be using precast segmental walls, that they felt they wouldn't need a construction easement. Dewatering, I'm not sure if that's really been addressed. I think the property to the east had to dewater, and they got a permit from the DEC
To do water,
to
yes.
dewater into the river, but that would have to be addressed in the scoping, coordination of staging and materials of equipment with Riverview Lofts. They're using some sort of subterranean cistern for water retention with an overflow pipe for a 100-year storm. So I just would want the, perhaps the town engineer to comment on that. Again, explanation of the height of the building is really 60 feet. Is the cellar a floor above grade?
Is there a height restriction?
60 feet.
That is it?
Five stories,
That is
60 feet,
for downtown?
yes.
But that's midpoint between the 2 points of grade. So it could be actually from the back look taller, because it's the midpoint between the front of the building and the back of the building.
Has Vinnie got anything to, has he overlooked the situation?
Well, I'm not sure if we forwarded this one to Vinnie. I know we're forwarding to the town engineer.
At this point, we're still in the secret referral process. We haven't really started the site plan, I don't think. So we're still in the environmental stage of it, so I don't know if we had a real hardcore look at it from an engineer at this point. I mean, we referred it probably to Drew, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we did refer to Drew.
I think the points you bring up are valid, we wanna pass them on. In my opinion, I think most of the board probably agree. The elevations, have to be drastically improved. Where's the parking gonna be for the residents? And I think the amount of units might be, a little high for the amount of the parking that they have. Those, would the board agree those are important to us?
Karen, did they give the size of, they have studios, 1 bedroom, 2
Yeah,
bedroom?
they give a
Did
They
give you
did give a
square footage for
breakdown.
each one?
I'd have to look it up. Hold on.
910 square foot, 1,000, and 1532. Three different,
Oh, that's the retail stores.
Yeah, that's the retail.
oh, it's retail, okay, yeah.
Because in looking at the plan, it's very small, but that's the scale too.
Okay, they break this up by floor, so, floors 2 through 5, they're gonna have 24 studio apartments per floor. Oh, no, 24 studio apartments, 72 one-bedrooms, 44 two-bedrooms. and then on the garden floor, they're gonna have 8 studios,
Yeah.
13 one-bedrooms, and 9
I'm just curious of the
two-bedrooms.
size of the unit, how
How big
square
are they?
footage for the studios, for the one?
They vary. The studio apartments have to be under 500 square feet, I believe, so they're all in the 400 range. Or maybe it has to be under 450 square feet, I don't remember offhand. But,
It's 20 by 20.
Yep.
the one-bedrooms are 600 to 701 square feet.
Mhm.
The two-bedrooms are 820 to 904 square feet.
The other thing, Karen,
Midgets.
mention the possibility of having 4 different elevation designs. It's 4 different tiers, correct?
Well, it's,
Wings or whatever you call
Fingers.
fingers.
yeah,
Like on the project across from Beggars there, they broke it up, instead of looking at one big thing, there's like 2 or 3 different facades on the front. I think that kinda
Well,
looks good.
this one, I mean,
The white stucco wasn't working for me.
No.
so you want more, facade variation.
I think it worked on the other
The
project.
town board was concerned of that character being consistent and compatible with the historic district and nature of the surrounding buildings. They thought it was too far apart. They looked for something more historic, not quite so modern.
There's no stucco buildings downtown, I can think of.
You like that design, different colors?
Yeah, I do. I think it kinda breaks up the big building and makes it.
So, anyway, just for the point of clarification, this is a referral back to the town board with your issues that you'd like to see in a draft EIS. We have until November 1st, I believe, to get our comments back to the applicant. So what I would, ask that Karen do, and we'll do it together, is put a list together of all the things that we've heard today. We're not gonna have time between now and your next meeting, so what we'll do is email the drafts to you, see if you agree with what we've written, if we've missed anything, or if you wanna add anything to it, and then we can forward that to the town board.
Great.
Does that work?
Good.
Yeah, it works.
That'd be good.
I think we touched upon,
Yep.
I think on the most, important substantive issues. And they're mostly consistent with what we've heard from everybody else.
Okay. Moving on to item number 3, minor subdivision map of Henry Silverman.
Chris, where did you put the parcel right here?
File. Nope. Go look at the file.
Good afternoon, Henry. How are you?
When we last met on this application, the big concern had to do with the date of the wetland flagging. It was more than 10 years old. The applicant went back, had them reflagged, and, had Jeff Seaman go back out and verify it, and he concurs with where the flagging, is, and so it's largely the same as to what is shown 10 years ago. Having said that, I think we're ready to move forward and schedule a public hearing on this application. I'll give a resolution for you later on today's agenda, and that's where we are.
Sounds good.
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 There's a resolution on, you probably shouldn't say anything.
Good.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, public hearings, we have none tonight.
Oh, no, we got,
Had a hanger in.
Public hearings,
oh,
Matt says
page
no.
2.
No, you don't have the updated one.
Overlook homes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got page 2.
Number 4, I'm sorry. Overlooked homes. That gave us that all that time and we didn't get to it?
Okay, resolution for this one too, so it should be signed up.
Yep.
Get the fire marshal's comment.
Hang on, gentlemen.
And, also, this is one that Vinny is here, and he also has some comments about it as well.
Okay. right. How we doing? Hello. Good. Okay, I had some driveway issues. Got them all squared away here?
Hope so.
Yeah, so we received a new plan, which does show the 20-foot wide improved road width, which was a requirement of the, New York State Building and Fire Code. The plan also includes at the southern terminus of the subdivision property, a 25-foot wide by 74-foot deep turnaround, which again was done to, comply with New York State Building and Fire Code. I did receive comments, this afternoon from the fire marshal, I sent a copy to you guys. Really the outstanding comments with this was, fire marshal had mentioned the shoulders shall be improved of a surface capable of supporting a vehicle attempting to pass a stopped vehicle. Now this is not like, it doesn't need to be designed, full roadway, he was talking about perhaps like a shoulder of crushed gravel, something so that if a ambulance or a police vehicle needs to get around a stopped fire truck.
I would add that's fine, but I would add to that where applicable, because if there's a telephone pole or a fire hydrant, obviously, you're not gonna have it, but where you can, crushed stone,
The map was also updated, the new wetland, the tidal wetland limit was re-verified by Young and Young, on March 1st, 2018. There was one small discrepancy, which I had spoken to Tom Wolpert of Young and Young about, which is a small discrepancy in the parcel size. The map says that the existing lot is 7.705 acres, but yet on the plan, the total of the proposed lots adds up to 7.013. So I think that's just, I don't know if it was just a clerical error, or if it's something that the applicant, design professional can, clarify.
I don't know if.
All right, that's, yeah, we can clarify that's something small. Comments from, we need comments from Mr. Gaudiello on the proposed construction of the road, if it's capable of handling 75,000 pounds. And drainage was also a comment from Mr. Gaudiello early on, which the plan doesn't propose any drainage structures. I don't know if it's necessary, we'll wait for Vinnie's comments on that. And that's where we're at.
First comment references the fire marshal with respect to the stabilization of the shoulder area and the ability to traverse that area with vehicles. The International Fire Code, Building Code, etc., speaks on that subject with respect to turnoffs or turnouts. And the prior plan that we previously saw provided 3 turnouts in a manner that would be consistent with the fire code. My first question would just be why, why was that abandoned? Was that an issue? Because it would appear to me that the means of addressing the fire marshal's comments with respect to stabilizing the shoulder area would be to provide those turnouts. So that would be my first comment. Just a general mapping question that I have also would be is, we're looking at Overlook Drive, and there seems to be a right-of-way there of 30 feet. Is that portion of what we're looking at part of Lot 4 that would be, Howard, that right-of-way is over Lot 4, so the title is owned here? Is that how that works? I'm just trying to understand.
No.
Okay.
Lot 4 does not have the fee title to the right of way.
But the applicant does in some form then, or no?
Yes, he does.
Okay. So as far as ownership of the right-of-way, that would be kept separate or different from the lot?
Well, that's the way we mapped it separate. No, I don't, I think that's a board thing or an issue with with who wants to have it, but the the dominant owner of the right of way is all the people that live down this thing.
Okay.
He's the serving, or the applicant is the serving owner. And if you'd like, we can, push the lots to the center line.
I would suggest that the, planning board attorney chime in on that to kind of give some direction. I could go either way, I don't care, it's just a matter of clarity to the map and it's, in essence, ownership.
No, I think too, I was interested in showing that the lots exclusive of the roadway had the required areas.
Yeah, but I guess we have to consider the future for maintenance and who's gonna fix what and how they're gonna work it out.
Well,
You'll
certainly
be
the
out of it
maintenance,
by
the
then, right?
maintenance of this small portion of the right-of-way is for everybody that's on the right-of-way.
Mhm.
It's not just for this applicant.
Right.
It's for the 24 or 26 homes
So in the
that,
future, what happens if you,
pardon?
what happens in the future if they need to get some paving done? Or there's ruts and things have to be filled, who pays for that? In the future?
I think nobody
I think
has,
it's just been maintained by the owners.
sure.
Historically, I think everybody.
It's like any old, the old roads like that,
Anybody can take on.
they go around and put their hand out, I think, to the neighbors and say, we gotta fix something.
That's what I mean, is that what happens
But,
now?
but here is only,
Yes.
you know, 4 lots.
That's what, as I understand historically, that's what happened.
You know, I'm not sure how to deal with it, but that's it. We're open to
Some
talk.
of my questions lead into some of the criteria that's codified, which the fire marshal makes reference to, so we'll further get to that. The way I'm interpreting the drawings is that, the intent of constructing this roadway would be to, mix in place the existing, stabilized area, which appears to be a mix of aggregate and asphalt pavement, macadam, which is a term that used to be used quite often. And grind that up to a depth of approximately 8 inches. Spread that out over 20 feet at the profile that we're seeing on this plan, and then putting 2 inches of a stone blend, I assume 3/4 inch stone blend material, which is aggregate and fines as a wearing course. The fire marshal has pointed out that, he's using a load of 75,000 pounds, supportive load of that. Obviously, that equates down to an axle load, et cetera. I'm not in a position to comment whether this design would be able to support 75,000 pounds or not. There's a little bit more involved with testing and design mix, et cetera, to get to that. But I don't, that aside, I think the more important thing to me relates to the comment that it needs to be surfaced to provide all-weather driving conditions. And in my opinion, to this board, that relates more to the maintenance of the roadway as well. In our subdivision standards, we really don't have anything other than a paved asphalt roadway for subdivisions. We don't have a common driveway or a private road standard other than a wearing surface of asphalt. And that's
This is a pre-existing,
well, I'm just bringing that, but the fact of the matter is this gentleman and applicant is here today because you have a subdivision in front of you, in which we use the subdivision design standards to evaluate what the road design, it seems that the International Fire Code obviously is playing a role here in, with respect to the fire marshal and what those improvements need to be. And again, I haven't I'm not saying, listen, this thing must be asphalt, but I'm letting this board know that within our subdivision design standards, other than surfacing a roadway with asphalt, there is no other standard out there. Which brings us back to the, quote, all-weather surface conditions, in which, you've got asphalt, which is more of a maintainable surface than a stone blend surface. There's more assurance associated with that. And then the last subject is on drainage. There does not appear to be any drainage on this roadway from, its starting point at Meeting House Creek Road, all the way down to the terminus. With respect to the profile of the road, the design is really not altering that. It's following existing grade pretty much, getting some of the humps out, but there would be, in essence, two low points somewhere in the vicinity of Station 600 and in Station 1450. You know, my initial recommendation would be that some type of drainage improvement be provided, to manage stormwater runoff. One of the difficulties or challenges with doing that is you have a water main that, in essence, runs along the whole eastern side of the roadway. So traditionally, what you would have is two catch basins on either side, your leaching structures on the other side, or a combination. In this instance, you will be extremely hard pressed to capture the water flow on the easterly side with the water main where it is. So that's somewhat of a challenging design. Typically, when you build a road, you know, the drainage goes in first and the water main goes in second. Unfortunately, in this case, you don't have that advantage.
This area is probably the highest point on Overlook Drive. I don't know how you're gonna put drainage and paving and, you know, on this pre-existing road. I know the road very well, and I think putting drains at the highest part is kinda gonna be a waste, but you're an engineer, not me.
Well, there are low points in the road. If you look at the profile right now, as I pointed out, between Station 400 and Station 900, which is 500 feet of roadway, you've got stormwater that's coming to a low point there. 500 feet of stormwater flow is not an insignificant number or an insignificant volume. So, I'm just bringing to the board's attention some of the items, issues that, in essence, that I think need to be brought to, your attention, the applicant's attention. I intend to put them in writing.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
And then we can kind of decipher what's appropriate based upon the conditions here. My last comment deals with the location of the water main and its apparent encroachment into proposed lot 3. My suggestion would be that, I don't know how actual that measurement was, but that, maybe an easement of some sort could be obtained from the applicant that would permit that water main to exist on private property. So that in essence, is kind of like a little bit of a summary of what I'm looking at here.
That's fine.
And then you put
Here
those
is
in writing,
the-
because we have a public hearing scheduled for next meeting.
Yeah, I'll give you my comments, and again, some of them are, I don't wanna get to a situation where, I'm advising the board, hey, listen, this is what needs to be done, and we're backing the applicant because of the circumstances into a catch-22 or something that might not be attainable. So, with all that said, I'll put my comments in writing, and by all means, if Howard and I wanna
Public hearing.
sit down together, we can kinda hash it out. But, I think the board here on this application, plays somewhat of a role in helping define what the standards of construction need to be with respect to the construction of this road. And I'll just leave that at that.
Yeah, if I could, thanks, Vinnie. We had some long discussions about the width of the pavement here, and finally I said, let me show 20 foot of pavement here in hopes that at some point along the way, with your approval, that we could meet with Vinnie and discuss, even visit the site together with my engineers or Young and Young's engineers and Vinnie to discuss the problems that I see with the construction of this pavement. Its proximity to the poles, its proximity to neighboring properties, and maybe we could discuss further where we might have turnouts. I think the turnouts are dangerous if they're not put in the right place, because fact, I think this road is dangerous now designed because the state recommends that there be no obstructions within 2 feet of the edge of the pavement. We're within a half a foot of the poles now, and so if you turn out, the guy looks down at his cell phone and hits a pole, I don't wanna be liable, I want you guys to be liable, and Vinnie to be liable, I'm just teasing you.
I got insurance.
But I'd love to be able to get to the point where we are addressing the drainage and are addressing this. I think the 20 feet of pavement to build this road and not encroach on the neighbor's property, because this doesn't belong to the developer, is very difficult, and there's some huge, beautiful trees there, as you probably know. And the roots of those things are gonna be an issue, and when we get down to the end here, I think there's no more than 14 feet of, when you get off of this, so we're improving a section of an existing road that's been there since the 1930s, and I'm sure it'll hold up 75,000 pounds, but we'll deal with that, and with Vinnie and my engineers, and I've talked to my guy, and we'll.
You guys get together before our next meeting, you think? And
No,
work these
I
things out?
wanted, I guess, some plan that we could work towards, and if this is approvable by you, and this is approvable, I think it's wrong to put this wide of pavement in there because of the danger to the people that are using it. But I bit the bullet and said, hey, this is the way the planning board, this is the way Vinnie wants it, this is the way it's gonna be.
You're talking about before December sixth?
So, but anyway, I'd like to move ahead with it, I know
We've got
Mr.
a
Vincent would
resolution
love
on
it.
tonight for calling for a public hearing, so.
No, but I'd be
think
glad
it's,
to
you know,
meet
again,
with Vinnie before or after.
As far as the public hearing goes, I would expect to have my written comments to this board prior to the hearing. On that subject of, what Howard is talking about, you know, I mentioned these 2 low points of where the water wants to go. I think it's senseless when you see a project who says, oh, you need drainage, and for the purposes of going out there and quote, putting token drainage in the ground, just to say that you did drainage, when it really is not really addressing an issue or being efficient, it's really frivolous. So with respect to this, you know, if we can go out there and look at these low points where the water's going to be directed, and as I said before, it would appear to me it's going where it has historically gone. If there is a need there, or if there's the ability to provide some type of stormwater containment, I think that's something that I would recommend that the board consider. If it's something that's totally out of the question, or it's not doable, and there's other means of addressing it, then I think that's something that the board could consider in their evaluation of this.
Just to help out with that, interrupting, we have done a lot of drainage designs on this particular road, different ideas in terms of how to handle the runoff. Most of the runoff now leaves the road naturally and heads down for the wetlands, or the creek, but we have done catch basins in the center of the pavement to try to catch it. We have done ponding areas alongside the pavement. We've done lots of things in my office. I didn't put them on here because I wanted to discuss these things with Vinnie, but we know that we will have to provide for proper drainage in those places, and have no problem with any resolution that says that we have to have the drainage approved by your board and him, but.
There's 2 criteria here that I believe are warrant, you know, or should be evaluated. Number 1 is going to be the safe passage of vehicle and pedestrian access through here, and maintaining stormwater runoff associated with that. The second is when you get a project like this and you're upgrading the road, you know, you wanna make sure that whatever you're doing is not impacting something or changing the water course or the way that it's always happened. You know, you get on that job where all of a sudden, you know, there was never a ponding situation there, and then all of a sudden they built, you know, the store next door, and now there's an issue. So, you know, with that said, you know, if you're going to be doing improvements to these roads, if you're going to be chopping up land and seeing more development out there, we gotta make sure that, that's not impacting people and those improvements are impacting them with respect to stormwater management. So that's the approach that I would suggest that we take in evaluating what should be or should be done out here from an improvement standpoint.
Just one thing, this is much more difficult to build than the typical good way. You have to consider that there's 20-some homes down here that need access all day long, all day, and we have something there that's gonna interrupt some of that traffic, and certainly if we start digging in lots of drainage and everything, how do you do that in a period of time where Mrs. Jones says, gotta get home, I gotta get the kids to soccer, I gotta do these things, so this has to be built and has to be left open, on a daily basis. How do you build half of a 20-foot road and not the other half?
Between 2 and 5 in the morning.
Getting on the
Well,
subject of.
I think this is up to you guys, and that's why the public hearing, if we have
Well, that's-
all the
and
people
that's
come
where I
out
wanna
here
go
and
with my
beat up
second
on you.
comment.
Hope they beat on you before they beat on me, so.
With the respect to the public hearing, you're gonna have my comments with respect to the way, what I see here. I think what's important for this board, when we do go to the public hearing, and should people come, is to see if what we're hearing from the public. A lot of times we have these public hearings, people get up there and say, well, you know what, listen, I got a huge flooding problem in my front yard, and this is just gonna make it worse. And then the applicant gets up to the table and says, well, we're proposing, 15 dry wells, and that's gonna happen. This public hearing provides the board the opportunity to hear from the public and say, listen, is there a stormwater problem out there? Are you subject to flooding? So I would say to the board, it's not ultimately necessary that we have a fully engineered plan with drainage up here, but let's see as we go through the public hearing process as to, what are the comments that are we hearing? What's the stability of the road? Is the road wide enough? Is drainage an issue out there? So, I'm not saying that, let's wait till after the public hearing, but I think that there's a process here, especially in this application, where as we can go, once we have the public hearing, and we go through that period of time, and before this board makes a decision to accept the design and move forward, that we should make sure that we've documented and we've looked at all these issues.
Agreed. Vinnie keeps mentioning something that reminds me of something else, but one comment here is that you guys know I've been at this a long time, and some of the developments, similar to this, maybe not as big as many homes, have these dirt roads that they live on, or Bay Woods is an example, or these roads that are 3,000 feet long up on a sound, and the last thing the people living there want is pavement, because they don't wanna attract people in there, and the next thing you know, this is gonna attract the guy, let's go down here and see what's down there, and they don't want. So there are those issues of the public now, whether they'll see those issues before we pave it, or after we pave it, or during the.
I believe they'll show up for this one, because it's been, there's been a different application, in front of the zoning board for, I think, 4 or 5 meetings.
On what?
On, I believe, setbacks.
On this,
Yeah,
on the roadway?
it involves this, applicant, not what we're talking about, but a neighbor, I think it's,
I think that's, down at the end,
Yeah.
at Harper.
yeah, we did a subdivision down there some years ago.
they'll be up.
We can work on this, certainly from what Howard's saying a little bit.
Yeah, and we've done this, and I've been around too long maybe, and I know what the position that you guys are in, and
I think we should have the
Vinnie's
public
in,
hearing and see what
I wanna
people say.
I wanna move ahead with it, so at some point, I'd like to, sit at some length of time and how do we deal with this, even scarifying this thing to 8 inches deep? How do we do that? We start hitting roots this big, and how do we do this? Now, this base has been there, my grandfather surveyed this property and this roadway in 1930 something, and this right-of-way here, if you look at the survey, there's a right-of-way 10 foot wide that goes through this building here, and that's the right-of-way that people have, the right-of-way by the description in deeds. But I've moved it over 30 feet against the neighbor's property here, and hopefully that's the way we'll, and Jason and Mr. Cuddy will you know, provide that as an alternative to all of the people that use this, roadway. But
Okay.
certainly, it's not as you've seen on the other surveys I've put in, this is 30 feet down to here, and then it's 10 foot wide straight across here, and,
This is one of my favorite roads in town, I just hate to see it be ruined.
yeah, I think,
By rules and
we're
regulations.
going backwards, but I
Yeah, I do
understand
too.
we have fire code, we have building code,
Okay,
and, and,
All right.
we should let them get to the resolution.
you're
Yeah.
right, I agree.
Before we change our mind.
No, I think, thank you anyway.
Yep, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, considering we have no public hearing scheduled tonight,
Riverhead Commons, Riverhead Commons, number 5.
okay, good,
Yesterday.
okay. So not at the public hearing.
Okay, we had previously approved a site plan for a medical professional complex of 4 buildings on 780 Old Country Road. And subsequent to that, the applicant came back and they wanted to put in a grease trap for the smallest building, perhaps to use it as a restaurant. So, what we did was we amended the resolution to accommodate that. So the zoning does allow for a restaurant, but the parking provided won't accommodate a restaurant over 48 seats. So, it will have to be, under 48 seats. So it's really pretty simple, just amended the plan dates, and put in a, condition that the amount of seats would be between 17 and 48 seats, because 16 seats or less, we would consider that more of a retail use.
Yeah, it's, again, this is purely done because we're doing the sewer infrastructure, and while we have the earth there instead of pavement, we do not have a particular tenant in mind at this point, whether it'll be office, whatever, but we just thought, while we're putting in the infrastructure, to put in the grease trap.
How you gonna design it, for how much?
So it's already been designed, approved by the health department.
Right, it's already in the
everything
ground.
For how many seats?
It's designed for it's a 1,500 gallon grease trap, it has to go up to 100.
The minimums of the,
Health department
health
are big.
department far exceed our
Yeah.
capabilities.
And we
But
have an
I
8-inch main.
thought that, you needed to have the approval for Michael Reichel to know how many.
To inspect it.
To
Right.
inspect it,
Okay.
right, so the
what
health
happened
department.
is we showed a grease trap on the plan, we sent it off to the health department, cause it has to be approved by them. Their approval came back, when we showed it to Michael, I thought Michael said you have to get it approved by the health department. I showed it to Michael, he said, well, I need to know how many seats you can have, because I wanna charge you a sewer fee based on that.
Right.
Basically, the agreement that I think I have with the sewer department and everything, because this is a 4-building complex, we would pay our sewer and water fees as we, construct each building and finish them before COs. I don't know if I'll ever have a 48-seat restaurant there. It's gonna cost us another $15,000 in fees, so our question came out, well, should I only show the 16 that's minimal, or should I show the 48 that's maximal? So, we went, we discussed, based on our parking, we could have 48 seats there. That's what we're now showing on the plan, it's a maximum at this point, and we'll see where it goes. And at least in the future, it's documented that that can exist, whether today or 25 years.
Health department's comfortable with giving you 1,500.
Yes, and again, we amended all the calculations on there so that
What are they for?
it is, and, we amended all the calculations so that Mr. Reichel is comfortable when we go to get our CO, that he says, hey, this is your flow, this is what you owe us, no problem.
That's basically it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Good luck. Yeah,
Let me try this again.
Resolution, you ready?
No public hearing.
Public
Oh,
comment.
sorry.
No public
No public
No public hearings at this time, we take comment on resolutions from anybody in the audience.
Sit next to Sam, exactly.
Okay, not seeing anybody come forward, let's
Alright,
go
move
to the.
resolution number 78, minor subdivision for Henry Silverman, to schedule a public hearing for a 3-lot subdivision.
Second.
Moved and seconded, members for,
All in favor? Aye.
members opposed?
218, resolution 79 of 218. A 1-year extension for the Riverhead Ford parking lot.
I'll second it.
Preliminary site plan.
Moved and seconded, vote please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, members opposed? Okay, next
I'll move
resolution.
resolution 80, Overlook Homes, to schedule a public hearing for December 6th. Get public input on the major subdivision application, so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, members for?
Aye.
Aye, members against?
I move resolution 81, for Riverhead Commons, to approve the site plan, amend the site plan approval to allow a grease trap for a restaurant.
I'll second it.
Motion and seconded, vote please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, members against? Resolution passes. Now we'll move into the public comment on all matters, anybody interested? Jeff?
Jeff Murphy, on behalf of the Long Island chapter, Long Island section of the Metro chapter of American Planning Association. Just a reminder, next Thursday is the APA East End Planning Conference. It's gonna start out, if you want to go in the mobile workshop, you need to be in the parking lot by 12:45, that's the time the bus is gonna leave. We're gonna go head over to Edwards Avenue, have a tour of the S-Power Solar Farm. So we'll learn all about the trials and tribulation of the solar farm industry on Long Island, nationwide, what the trade wars with China are doing to the industry, what pitfalls with the review process.
Interesting.
So the timing of this is, didn't plan for it to be this way, but it happens to be next week. So, after that, there's going to be, the first session is gonna be with the health department on the new, alternative wastewater treatment facilities. There's a dinner buffet after that, and the second session is manage a retreat in coastal zones of development.
One more comment before we, close up.
Sure.
The Korean farm on Toomey Avenue, we were trying to get a de minimis, amendment for the.
My temperature?
Yeah.
Yep.
What's going on with that?
They came back with some comments from Victor. I was gonna bring it back to the board. The board at the last meeting said, okay, we understand that, but we wanna hear back from Richard Ehlers first. Richard Ehlers is down in Florida attending to family matters, so I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with him about it, so. And I talked to Victor about today, he's fine with it. We're not slowing them down in terms of what they're farming, so.
Yeah, I understand, it's just been hanging around for an awful long time.
We're close, but again, until Richard comes back, I'm trying not to burn him
Okay.
when he's down there.
When he does come back, please move it to the front burner. so we can
Absolutely, yep.
Resolve the issue.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, anybody wanna move the,
I'll move the minutes of the town, of the Riverhead Planning, Board, from October 4th, 2018, so moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, vote please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, members opposed? Okay, no correspondence, Carissa? No executive session? Thank you, everybody, for participating today, and our next meeting will be November 1st at 7 PM. Thank you and have a good day.
What was the times that said here?